Welcome to Dig It, a real estate podcast by Hubble Realty Company.
Hi, everybody. My name is Whitney Schmidt. I'm a human resources business partner with Hubble Realty Company. Within Hubble, I support 3 different departments. So I support Indigo Living, which is our property management division, asset management, and our marketing team. And then with me today, I have Whitney Warren, and I will have her introduce herself.
Thanks, Whitney. There's 2 Whitneys here for the price of 1 today, so hopefully it doesn't get too confusing. But I own Evoke EQ. We specialize in supporting evoking emotional intelligence in leaders and teams. And our biggest belief is that professional development is personal. We don't get to just develop in a silo. So I work on whole human development, and it starts with knowing who we are and why we respond the way we do so that we can actually choose our responses and have a better experience of team and leadership.
Yeah, awesome. And I met Whitney through her conference last year, the first one that you ever held, which was really enlightening for me. And I really wanted to share that with my team. And so luckily, Derek Haugen, who's the vice president of Indigo Living, allowed me to meet with you, and we ended up having some really great sessions with that team and some of the support departments, and it was a really, really great sessions, and we've learned so much from that, and it's been really critical in how we interact with each other today and how we've continued to build those relationships within our team and also outside our team.
I love to hear that. I mean, because sometimes I don't get to hear the aftermath, right? Of, and to give you some context for what Whitney's talking about, for me, the introduction is everything, because you came to Enneagram for Evolving Leaders, which is, it's an in-depth thing that you experienced. You experienced it with, 50.
And emotional too.
Yeah, 50 strangers.
Yeah.
Really.
Yep.
But when you bring that training, so Enneagram for Evolving Leaders is all about using the Enneagram, which is an assessment that tells us why we do what we do. But the training itself is specifically so that you understand not just why you do what you do, but why everyone sitting around you at the table does what they do. So it's this huge exploration. And I really commend your team for taking that on, because it is vulnerable to know this about each other. I would love to hear inside, what was going on in all your minds as you found out each other's Enneagram types, and you're going to have to talk, and even just reading your report, you're like, I'm going to have to talk about this.
Yeah.
And so the vulnerability of that, the risk of that, and then of course there's the payoff, but you have to get through, I think, that initial, what am I about to tell my team?
Yeah, and being okay with being vulnerable. I think that was one of the hardest pieces of that. And allowing the space for others to be vulnerable too, because it's not easy for everybody.
It is not. And there's certain types that struggle with that more, but I think we all struggle with that in our own capacity. What were some did you experience any fear or apprehension on the inside that first time I was about to come through?
Absolutely. I mean, I felt like my insides were going to be on the table for all of my team to see, which was really intimidating. But it was also really exciting because I think people might see me as having different quirks and not understanding why I do the things the way that I do. And so being able to share that with the team and kind of explain my viewpoint and kind of why my behaviors are what they are, it really helped them to understand myself. And since then, our how we go about projects and how we go about sharing information has changed because they know what I need from the team.
And doesn't it sound so simple and a
does,
little silly? People are like, what's the value of doing emotional intelligence work? And I'm like,
everything.
Everything. It's everything. It underpins every single social interaction you have. It underpins how you feel about yourself, how you feel about others. And I think the point you just made about understanding, we as human beings, we need to understand other people.
Absolutely.
In order to not resist them, to be on board, to give them what they need. But how often do we take our own understanding of ourselves away from we don't dig in enough to understand ourselves. Therefore, it's kind of a hopeless
and it's kind
dream.
of scary too to know, oh, that's why I do that.
Okay, so you, right? When you had that, you were like, okay, that's why. Then, what did that fear? I'm such an interviewer. I can see it. I'm already asking you a question. What did that fear do to you? Was it curious or was it?
Yeah, I mean, it was curious, like it makes total sense as to why, right? Like how I think of how I grew up and how I got the things that I wanted was through the Enneagram. And so I guess for you listeners, I'm a 6, which is a loyal skeptic. And so I really focus on stability, whether that's financial stability, relationship stability. I want information. That way I can understand why I'm doing what I'm doing and be able to make more informed decisions.
Absolutely.
And I got that by acting as what people would call a perfectionist, which doesn't feel great. Like that title just has its own like kind of stigma to it. And so my team now, they know that when I'm asking questions, it's not because I'm going to say no, but because I'm just trying to get all the information so that I can best support them. So if I have all the information, then I can help you make the more informed decision and to be a better leader and team member for them.
100%. Well, what I heard you just say is they now know where your questions are coming from, so they're not taking them personally.
Yeah.
They're just giving you what you need to get them to the next step.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I just find how often I take people personally when I'm like, oh, they're literally just asking for what they need. Yeah. But I am hearing it through a lens of whatever my lens is, not enough, or like, and that's, I think, sometimes when you're being questioned, and when you get that 1 and you're 6, you're thinking through everything. You're thinking through what's right. And I'm an 8, so power and control. When someone questions me, my initial reaction is like, who you think you are?
Right.
To question me. Like, take a step back. But I have someone with a very high 6 on my team. And now what it's created is she knows, A, that she's going to have to repeat things to me a million times. I'm sorry, Amanda. But I know about her that when I propose a new idea, she's going to be kind of an instant no. In just the sense of like, she wants to protect us. She wants to make sure it's safe. She wants to fully vet it. And now that I totally get that about her, we use that as her superpower. We were like, this is what you do. Yeah. And now what I do is I give her the new idea at least an hour before our meeting. Yeah. And you're like, yes. So she can have her full meltdown, just like solo. And then she can come and she asks the best questions. And I know that like we're both doing our work, right? We're both doing our work to support each other and getting to the next thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And my team has gotten a lot better about doing that for me. There was a specific project that we were working on and I was melting down. Like, how are we going to do this? I don't have the time. I don't have the resources. There's just no way I can get this done. And I fired off an email and then I sat back and realized, okay, am I just being stubborn? Am I just scared that I'm not going to do this perfectly or that I'm not going to do this correctly? And I went down to that person's office and I was like, if you could ignore that email, that'd be great.
That's amazing.
And like, I understand the value in doing this and let me know how I can help you. And they know me well enough by now too that they give me that grace too, that they know that, okay, Whitney just fired off an email. She's upset about something or scared.
Yeah, scared. I think you actually hit on it. It's how often do we, express anger or like, and it's actually just fear.
Right.
Or like, no, resistance, I can't do that. Here's all my concerns. And it's just like, I'm scared that maybe I'm not going to get it right, that I'm not going to know everything, that I'm not going to serve, that I'm not going to be able to contribute to this goal.
Yep.
And then,
and really how I see myself on the team is helping mitigate that risk and to manage that risk and making sure that our employees are protected, that the business is protected. So if I don't do that correctly, then what happens if something goes wrong? And so that fear, that scaredness, really kind of it helps my team to understand why I do the things that I do, and also myself, and to be able to check myself when I'm feeling those emotions. Like, okay, is this out of the issue at hand that really is out of control, or is it my emotional response to this?
Check yourself before you wreck yourself.
I know. I was like, I'm just gonna
for
snap
sure.
for this. Oh my goodness, because that's it.
Yeah.
That is emotional intelligence. That is self-awareness. That is the foundation. Look at you. You went down and like, just were like, hi. I did that. Like, sorry. And like ignore it. But like, that's what we get to have. Think about how often in your past you would have sent off that email and not even thought anything about it. Not gone back, not been like, oh,
I would have doubled down. Yeah.
You would have doubled down.
Oh, absolutely.
And instead you're like inviting people into the question with you.
Yeah.
Like this is, Whitney, I actually haven't heard this from you. So like, thank you for sharing this all while it's being recorded, because that's super vulnerable. But like when I try to explain what is the value of this, it's that moment. And like you get to have that in every aspect of your life. And we are at work most of the time.
Right.
So when I think about leaders, teams, corporations, like things that are, I mean, Hubble is, at least in Des Moines, and I know you guys are even further, but like you are pervasive as you want to be. Yeah. And in that you have so many employees, you have so many people, and like why I choose to work with corporations is because corporations have the most amount of people in the most space. And when I think about how can I uniquely change the world, it's literally how can I have corporations say yes to supporting me in bettering ourselves as individuals, and then the corporation rises, the community rises, and our families rise, like everything rises around that, and corporations have the opportunity to invest in individual growth in such an impactful way these days, in my opinion, and Hubble is doing that.
Yeah, no, I mean, Hubble is in so many different business lines and in so many different areas. I mean, our Indigo Living teams down in Kansas and Missouri, up in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. We have the home company out in Omaha. We've got multiple
everywhere.
Home building divisions here. We have Highmark Senior Living now. I mean, we are in so many different spaces, and I think the Enneagram can really help our leaders understand not only their teammates and how to work more effectively together, but to understand who they're working with too, and to help build those relationships when they're trying to sell a home, when they're trying to, get that family to have their loved one live in a senior living community. That's a big step for people.
There's so much fear in that. Like, are they going to be safe? Are they going to be taken care of? Are they going to be lonely? And the thing that we understand when we have that self-awareness, and, I happen to use the Enneagram because I think it's an incredible self-awareness tool. But you have to use it that way.
Right.
And you can say, like, we may never know, like, a client's Enneagram. I don't know clients' Enneagram when they walk in the door. Well, sometimes I do if they've taken it, that's why they're there. But in other contexts, I don't. But I can hear the questions, and I can empathize with the fact that they have fear.
Yeah.
Like, that was actually really big for me as a leader and as just a human being walking on this earth, was to recognize that I have fear. It is operating in me constantly. And I am just simply someone that chooses to take a very strong stance, so no one would ever indicate that or say, like, oh, she's afraid. Like, the worst thing you could say to myself, or I would say to my ego, because myself is like, yes, you're very afraid. Like, myself understands she's afraid. My ego is like, you are never afraid. You are always strong. Like, don't let them get the upper hand on you, all of that. But like, even just recognizing I have fear, I operate from fear, everyone else is in the same boat. What if I didn't make this harder for either of us?
Right.
What if I was just like, I'm scared, you're scared, we're scared, let's just do it together.
Right.
Wouldn't that be great? So like, now I don't even, yes, I can listen, and I can, to a certain extent type where that fear is coming from. Like, what kind of fear is that? Like, when I hear that, are we safe? I'm like, okay, I hear a 6 fear. Whether they are a 6 or not, I'm going to respond to that, and I'm going to respect that fear. I think that's it. Like, respecting other people's fear. It's important.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is. And how we operate, like, when people are asking questions, they just want to know to understand. And so I remember buying my first home and how absolutely terrifying that was. I'd only bought like a $20,000 car before,
and that's
that.
still a big purchase, and you're like, this is like,
10x
10x that. It's fine.
Yep. And we had kids, and I was like, okay, it's got to be in a good school district. Are there like walking trails? How are they going to get to school? There are just so many things. And our poor realtor, who was, he was amazing, but I was like, okay, there's like a crack in the wall over there. Is that like water damage? What's going on with that? And he's like, Whitney, it's probably fine.
It's probably fine. And,
Right.
you know, he can, if I was your realtor, I'd be like, okay, we got a strong 6 coming in. And, you know, you've got that. You're also hyper aware of resources.
Yeah.
Which I think is, you know, back to your earlier point of like, okay, when things kind of go off the rails in the workplace because of your desire for perfection and safety and security forever.
Yep.
Forever, for everyone. You know,
Also
forever. Forever, everyone. That is probably correct. But, you know, the flip side of that is you're literally there as the HR professional that you are to make sure things go right, well, and safely for everyone. Like your personality was also hired for all of the incredible things that come out of your hypervigilance and your ability to like, you know, meet and exceed the task.
Yep.
And so like, it's like, how do we appreciate both sides? Because if we only want what's amazing about you, then we're not going to be able to have it as often if we don't learn to support the times when you're like, okay, I'm having a moment. Okay, cool. I see it. I got you.
Yep.
Like, let's honor that moment so we can have more of the amazing moments.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Talk about moments. A couple weeks ago, I called my manager, she's Dinah Briggs, the vice president of HR. And I was like, I'm going to cry. I might say some really bad words. Just give me like 2 minutes. And then after my meltdown, then we're going to get to problem solving and we're going to work on this situation. And she's like, okay, let's do it. I'm here for this. I'm here for you. And so just allowing me that space too, to be like, I'm going to be upset about this. And then after that, I'm going to put it aside and get down to work. I mean, she does a really great job of allowing that space for me.
Is that something you would have asked for before?
Oh, no.
Okay.
No, I probably would have just sat in my car in the hotel parking lot crying.
Yeah, I do a lot of car crying as well. That's my favorite place to cry. People are like the shower, and I'm like, no, it's not as cathartic. Like, you know, I don't want my waters to be mixed.
Yep.
But even just that practice, that's something that I you know, share with people is like, if you have to vent, if you get to vent and you just need it out of your system, prepare people that you're venting. Like you did that and you're like, okay, I need 2 minutes to just be, you know, kind of the worst version of myself for like a minute. Let it all rampage. And then we will do the thing we do best. But you prepared her really well. Like, yeah, she created that space, but you were like, this is exactly what I need. And then we're going to do the thing that we both want to do. I mean, that's kind of killer in a work environment because I know for me, I resist,
like emotional dumping or
yeah. Thank you for sharing. Like I was going to use a worse word.
Use whatever word you want.
I resist that, but I know like sometimes I need to do it. And so I want there to be space for everyone on my team, even if it's me that's created the problem. Because, you know, I own a couple of businesses. It's usually me that's created the problem.
Right.
Like it's always me creating the problem. But if I need to know it's going to end.
Yeah.
And that's what really supports me is like, we're going to do this. It's going to end. We're going to move on. And I'm like, cool, let's get negative.
Yeah.
Because then we're going to move on.
Yeah, no, for sure. My one of my team members, she happens to report to me. We've gotten in the really good like space where she'll come in and she'll be like, okay, I just need like 5 minutes to complain about something. And then I'm going to get back to doing my job. Or like, I really need 5 minutes to just understand if I'm thinking about this incorrectly, if there's a better way to go about it, should I be upset? And sometimes she gives me the heads up and I'm like, I don't have the emotional capacity for it right now. Yeah. Give me like 30 minutes, put something on my calendar for later today and we'll dive in. But sometimes you do have to say like, I'm not in the emotional space to help you and I'm not going to be my best self for you. So can we push this back to a later time?
But then you can also have that conversation and say, I'm at my cap. I'm not going to serve either of us. Because how many times have we walked into a conversation when we are already
pushed to the max,
full? Yep. And then, I mean, I have a tendency if I step into conversations during that time to just add fuel to the fire rather than just be able to listen.
Yeah.
And then what I heard you saying is like, give me some mental time to prepare so I can be a good listener and I'm not just reacting from the state I'm also in. Like if you're generally, it's hard for me if I'm already in a reactive state and somebody's like, hi, I'm just here. I'm here with my gasoline. And I was like, no. I am already a raging bonfire.
Right.
Like, you do not want what I got right now. But I respect that you've got gasoline.
Yes.
Let's figure out where to put it.
Yeah.
Can
yeah.
I toss in a question? Whitney, well,
Which
that
one?
was silly.
Which one?
Whitney. When you're walking into the corporations and the companies that you've worked with, how do you help facilitate that vulnerability and that, just especially in the leaders that have been there for a very long time who may be very new to the Enneagram or maybe not as receptive? How do you walk in there and teach them some of these?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that question, because it can be, I want to acknowledge the risk that occurs when you choose to open up the can of worms that is emotional intelligence, that is like really talking about how we work rather than just the work we do, because it gets vulnerable. It just does. Like there's and your weaknesses are displayed right next to your strengths. So for leaders who are stepping into this work, all I want you to hear is you're already brave. You're already strong. You can already handle what's going to transpire. But I think there is something to be said of like, okay, when I walk in, how do I create that space? First of all, usually if they are the leader of the team, I've had lots of one-on-one interactions with them up until the point of being in that room with them, because they need to know that I'm also there for them. Like as a leader, it's so often that you're there for everyone else and you're pouring yourself out. And even if you, I get called in sometimes to work with leaders that are aggressive or like not listening or things like that. And when people are like, oh, this person's got such a big ego. And I'm like, that person has so much fear. That person has so much fear. And I say that in all of my facilitations, or at least I try to, is it when you see someone and you say, that person's got big fear, what I say is that person's got a big ego. I say that person's got big fear. And like, I may demonstrate my fear differently. I'm a type 8. I'm very frequently, there's a lot of type 8s in leadership. We walk towards it. We're natural fighters. Like we fight for others. We fight for ourselves. Like we want to move things forward. But that personality type can also feel like they're completely and totally alone in the world and that no one is as tough or can take care of them. So that aggressive stance becomes even more important. And like just looking at them and being like, I got you in this, and you are strong enough to take whatever comes your way. And then when we're in the facilitations themselves, the interesting thing about the Enneagram is it opens it right up. Like, I think there's an element of being someone who's open, and then there's an element of having read all of this and realized that, when you read an Enneagram report, you're reading a highly specific generic report. Every single 6 gets the same report that you got, Whitney. Every single 8 gets the same report I do. I am not alone. And so that in and of itself, that recognition that I'm not alone, I'm not wrong for thinking the way that I think or feeling the way that I feel or doing what I do, that immediately lends to vulnerability simply because we realize that it's not our fault.
Yeah.
It just is.
Yeah.
And when something just is, we're like, well, just is. It's not the same level of vulnerability. I'm not talking about me. I'm talking about a trait that many of the people in this room can understand. So I think the baseline of that is the Enneagram allows us to understand we're all in this together. And then I show up in that space of like, yo, we're all in this together. And then people just naturally step towards that.
Yeah.
It's like the ultimate invitation.
Yeah. And it's fun too. Like you have those epiphany moments where you're like, oh, that's why I reacted that way in that one meeting. Wasn't my best moment, but that's why I did it. But I think you also, Whitney, like the sessions that we've had and the conference that I went to, when you open it up very vulnerably. I mean, you lay yourself out to the team, and you're like, yes, I do. And it gives us the space and the ability to know, like, okay, this is okay. This is going to be vulnerable, but if she can do it, I can do it.
I'm really glad to hear that, because sometimes I get like these, like, oh my God, I just said that. But I also know that everyone's having that moment. And if I don't have that moment first, who is? And I guess I'm not one of those facilitators that takes, some facilitators would take the stance of like, I'm this neutral entity coming in. I'm not neutral. I don't believe any of us are neutral. If I'm neutral, I'm not impacting anything.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I am a personality in this room. I am like, here's all my data. Here's all my crap. Here's how I'm going to react. Here's when I'm going to lose my patience. Here's it all, so that you can also not take me as a facilitator personally, and know that if you rub me the wrong way, or if I rub you the wrong way, we're going to handle that together. We're going to have a conversation about that. Yeah. And I'm going to teach you how to have it, and that it's okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It's funny that you say that. So, out of those sessions, I work closely with the accounting department, but not too closely. And so I know like a couple of people that I work with, but I don't know the whole team. And so in one of our sessions, we got to meet with another team member who's also a self-pres 6. And I think it was like a week or two later, there was this big meeting because Indigo had reached 10,000 units. Awesome. And there was like cake and champagne and a lot of people in this room, and I went right up to her and I've never spoken to her outside of those sessions. And I was like, are you also thinking about when it is acceptable to leave? And she was like, oh my gosh, yes. Yeah.
Commonality.
And so we just sat together in silence. And it was comforting, oddly enough, but it also brought something that team members who wouldn't normally communicate together or interact with each other, some common ground. And so like, I understand why she's sitting in the corner and looks uncomfortable, because I feel that.
Yeah, you may not be outwardly displaying that, but you can be like, oh, the same thing that's going on in her is going on in me. Here's my ally. And what a crazy like commonality to I mean, it's not in the sense of like, I'm sure a lot of people resonate like that, but this is not someone who you'd have a lot of overlap with at work.
Yeah, no. Yeah.
There's no real reason for you to necessarily go sit next to that person. And yet you're like,
there's my person.
There's my person.
Finding new friends as an adult is also hard. So that's just, I mean, that's why I like how the Enneagram just overlaps. And so I don't want to cut you guys short, but we're running out of time.
Yeah.
And I absolutely want to go off the rails with you too. Okay,
let's do
it. We'll do that, and then we'll come back around and make sure that if there's anything you want to shout out from a business perspective, we can. Off the rails question: what's your earliest memory? It doesn't say childhood; it just says what's your earliest memory.
This is
either
really
of you can
Enneagram
start.
question too,
right? I actually thought it was fairly fitting.
My earliest memory.
I can't tell if my memories are photos or actual memories.
Is
that
know.
weird?
Yeah. When I read the question, I maybe went out of your conversation for a minute trying to think of mine, and agreed. My mom also documented my life from, for the first 7 years was on, one of those big old handheld.
Oh, that's amazing to have that.
It was great. But I also have seen a lot of footage of myself from when I was very young.
Yeah.
And so I think one of the earliest, I'll put air quotes around it, memories for me is helping my dad milk a cow when I was very little. We've always lived on a farm, and I remember being out there all the time and petting it. Yeah. They were always so warm and docile and nice. But I know that I've also seen that video.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's mine.
I think my first what?
No, you go ahead. You go first.
I don't know if this is a memory, but it's like my first visceral experience that comes to mind.
That counts.
Yeah. I'm like, this is a really boring memory.
No.
But I also lived on a farm, and we had a really long driveway. And so for me to get to the bus stop, I had to walk down the super long driveway. It was cold. And I remember my brother wasn't old enough, and he would always watch Barney in the mornings. But I was too old to watch Barney. But I would watch Barney through through the cracks and the crevices while I was waiting. And I just knowing I'm too old for this, but I am so enjoying my Barney time. That, and then
you're enjoying your brother's Barney time.
My brother's Barney time that I'm stealing as I wait for the bus. But the other thing, the bus seems to be a thing. I remember my mom literally making a friend for me on our bus route, because we were rural route,
first one's on, last one's off. Yeah. And it's where you learned all the bad words.
Yeah. Oh, you definitely learned all the bad words.
Back.
But I had a huge fear that I would just be alone. And so she literally orchestrated this person, you're going to meet this person before you get on the bus that first day. They're going to be waiting for you the whole, and when I think about true killer parenting moments from my mother. She's had several, but like that one, I was like, she knew that I didn't want to be alone on the bus, like going to school the first day.
Oh,
love that.
It's still so true. I don't want to be alone on the bus.
Well, I have like 3 things that come to mind that I can't quite place which came first, but they're all sort of like not traumatic experiences, but not great childhood moments. Like one of them, I remember my brother's dad, we were playing baseball in the front yard, and he accidentally, he threw the ball intentionally towards me, right? And I did not put the glove up to my face. And I had a nice black eye for a couple weeks. Yeah.
What happened to you?
Right. Yeah. And I'm pretty sure that was in like kindergarten or preschool. And then there was a time I remember getting ready for kindergarten. My family's still asleep. My brother was just born, and so my mom, like, they're still sleeping. At this point, I'm pretty self-sufficient in the mornings. Like, I can make cereal, toast, or whatever. And I got distracted by cartoons on the TV.
As one does.
And my toast was on fire in the toaster, and so we had to get out of we lived in like one of those houses that's like the basement's converted, and then there's people living upstairs or whatever. And I had to sit in a cop car with my brother, who is a newborn, and my mom's outside talking to like the fire department, and my brother's dad refused to leave, and so he's still sleeping in bed.
While all of this is going on,
he's like,
it's fine. It's a toaster fire. Like, I'm just going to be here.
Yep.
I love that. Oh, thank you guys for taking the time today to dive in. It's been really fun. I know we could keep going on and on and on and on. And there's going to be a conversation after the conversation. Probably. Of course, always. Any other shout outs we can, give again? Amazing to have you both.
Oh, thank you for having me here. Thank you for being willing to, Whitney, for sharing everything that you shared about your experience, because that's, you can't see this thing that we do.
Yeah.
You can see it because like people who start to do this work, they start to glow. They start to be like just attractive to everyone. Like you don't realize like when you start to become more self-aware, you also become like interestingly more attractive. But like it's not like a tangible marker. And so the only way for me to show what I do is by hearing how you've taken the knowledge and integrated it and made it yours. Because I can't have your experience. I can't do it for you. I can't help you pause. I can just give you enough knowledge for you to be like, okay, that's it. And then you are literally it from there. And so thank you for sharing, because that's the proof of all of this work.
Of course. And we appreciate everything that you've done for Indigo and the team, and hope to continue that partnership moving forward.
Absolutely.
Likewise.
All right, Whitney Warren, Ivory House Photography, Evoke EQ. I love it. Thank you so much. You can catch Dig It anywhere you get your podcasts. Dig It, a real estate podcast by Hubble Realty Company, or you can watch on YouTube. Thanks, everyone.
Fantastic. Thank you.